Have you ever watched someone run for their life without knowing who or what they were running from? In 2014, a young German tourist sprinted out of an airport and vanished into a forest. He was never seen again. This is the disturbing case of Lars Mittank. Lars Mittank was a 28-year-old man from Germany. Quiet, friendly, hardworking. The kind of person no one expected to become the center of one of Europe's most chilling mysteries. In June of 2014, Lars traveled with friends to Bulgaria for a simple summer vacation. Sun, beach, drinks, nothing unusual. But within a few days, something changed. Something deep, psychological, and terrifying. What began as a normal trip would turn into one of the most unsettling disappearances ever recorded on camera. The trip started out like any other. Lars and his friends were staying in Golden Sands, a popular resort area on Bulgaria's Black Sea coast. They were there to have fun, relax, and watch the World Cup. By all accounts, everything was going perfectly. They enjoyed the nightlife, soaked up the sun, and acted like any other group of young guys on holiday. Lars, known for being a bit more reserved than his friends, was still having a great time. There was absolutely no indication that this trip would end in a way that would haunt his family and mystify the world for years to come. But then, things took a turn. During their last night out, Lars got into a minor altercation at a beach bar. Details are a little fuzzy, but apparently, he got into a disagreement with a group of other tourists over a football rivalry. It was a small, stupid fight, the kind that happens all the time on vacation. But this one had consequences. Lars ended up with a ruptured eardrum. It wasn't a life-threatening injury, but it was serious enough to need medical attention. The next day, his friends were scheduled to fly back to Germany. Lars went to see a doctor who confirmed the ruptured ear. The doctor advised him that the change in air pressure during a flight could make the injury worse. He recommended Lars stay behind for a few days to let it heal and prescribed him an antibiotic called cefuroxime to prevent infection. So, his friends made the difficult decision to fly home without him, leaving Lars to recover alone in Bulgaria. From this point on, everything takes a dark and bizarre turn. Alone in an unfamiliar city, Lars's behavior suddenly became strange. Almost immediately after his friends left, he began calling and texting his mother back in Germany. At first, the calls were just to update her, but soon, the tone shifted. He started whispering, telling her he felt unsafe. He said he was being followed by 4 men who were trying to rob or kill him. He told his mother to cancel his credit cards. He sent frantic messages that made very little sense. He told her not to trust anyone, not even the police. He checked out of the resort hotel he was in and tried to find somewhere else to stay, convinced he was being watched. He hid in a hotel lobby, security cameras catching him pacing back and forth, peeking out of doorways and looking over his shoulder as if someone was right behind him. But when you watch the footage, no one is there, or at least, no one visible. His paranoia was escalating by the hour, and he seemed to be spiraling into a state of pure terror. Things got even stranger that night. Lars managed to find a cheap hotel near the Varna airport, planning to catch a flight home the next day. The hotel staff later reported an incredibly disturbing incident. Around midnight, Lars burst out of his room and ran into the lobby, terrified and shaking. He claimed that the same 4 men Heidi mentioned earlier had followed him to the hotel and were trying to get into his room. He was utterly convinced that his life was in danger. The hotel staff, alarmed by his state, went to check his room. It was completely empty. There was no sign of anyone. No forced entry. Nothing was out of place. It was as if the entire threat had been in his mind. Lars, however, was not convinced. He was too scared to go back to his room and spent the rest of the night wandering around the hotel lobby and grounds, wide-eyed, agitated, and unable to sleep. Something profound was happening in his mind, but whether it was a psychological breakdown, a reaction to something he took, or a genuine threat, remains the central question of this case. The next morning, July 8th, 2014, Lars made his way to the Varna airport, hoping to finally fly home. He was still in a state of high alert. He called his mother one last time from the airport, telling her that they wouldn't let him fly, and that he was still being followed. She could hear the panic in his voice. She tried to calm him down, advising him to see the airport doctor, hoping they could help. Lars followed her advice and went to the airport's medical room. Inside, the doctor began examining his ear. Another man Reportedly, a construction worker entered the room for a moment. This is where things went completely off the rails. For reasons unknown, the presence of this other man seemed to be a trigger for Lars. Witnesses say Lars suddenly stood up, his eyes wide with fear, and whispered the chilling words, "I don't want to die here." Without any other warning, he sprinted out of the medical room, leaving all of his belongings behind: his wallet, his passport, his phone, everything. He ran through the airport terminal, a blur of motion on the CCTV cameras. He ran past confused passengers, past security and out the main entrance. He didn't stop. He ran across the parking lot, and the last haunting piece of footage shows him effortlessly climbing a tall, barbed wire fence at the edge of the airport property. Then he disappeared into a dense, sprawling sunflower field and the adjacent forest. That was the last time anyone ever saw Lars Mittank. So, what could have possibly happened? Let's explore the main theories. The first, and perhaps most widely accepted theory, is that Lars suffered an acute psychotic episode. The stress of being injured, alone, and in a foreign country could have triggered a latent mental health issue. Furthermore, the antibiotic he was prescribed, cefuroxime, has, in extremely rare cases, been linked to severe side effects, including hallucinations, anxiety, and paranoia. If his own mind had turned against him, the terror he was expressing would have felt terrifyingly real to him, even if the threat was imaginary. Another theory suggests he may have unknowingly consumed something that caused this extreme paranoia, perhaps during the altercation at the bar, or at some point after. He was given a drug without his knowledge. Certain substances can cause prolonged psychosis or hallucinogenic effects that could last for days. However, there's nothing in his background or toxicology history to suggest he was a drug user, making this theory difficult to prove. Then there's the possibility that someone was actually following him. Some people believe Lars was telling the truth. Maybe the men from the bar fight held a grudge and decided to intimidate or harm him. His fear seems so consistent, so specific, and so intense. But if that's the case, how did no security camera, not a single witness, ever see these men? How could they follow him so perfectly without ever being detected? It seems almost impossible. Finally, there's the grim theory of foul play. A lone, disoriented man running into a vast, isolated forest is extremely vulnerable. It's possible he was kidnapped or murdered after he left the airport grounds. That area is vast, dense, and difficult to search. Despite extensive investigations by both German and Bulgarian authorities, and countless searches by his family, no body, no clothing, and none of his belongings have ever been recovered from that forest. Today, more than a decade later, the disappearance of Lars Mittank remains one of the most disturbing unsolved cases ever caught on camera. We have this final, chilling image of a man who looked genuinely terrified, running from an enemy that no one else could see. Was it his mind collapsing in on itself? A real, unseen threat? A momentary panic that led to a tragic accident? Or something far stranger? The truth, it seems, vanished with him into that forest. And until the day he is found, Efeberi's the last image of Lars Mittank will remain a haunting reminder that sometimes the scariest mysteries are the ones that begin inside the human mind. Thanks for watching.